Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today it's kind of really windy, so I apologize if this sounds a bit, you know. Yeah, so I'll be talking about the basics of drawing. So the first thing is how to shade. So I'm gonna see if I can give you a rundown of how I learned how to shade and what I started with, because it's gonna take practice, it's gonna take time, and yes, your first few drawings will not look as how you want them to look, but you just gotta give it time. Okay, so we're just gonna be talking about how to shade, simplifying objects, understanding light, and pressure control in your pencil strokes. If you're doing a sketch, you want to use B pencils instead of H pencils, because B pencils don't leave that harsh mark like H pencils do. So the higher number it goes, the darker the shade is. I usually stick like with a 3B pencil. So make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on it, or you're going to have some harsh lines. So the key to shading smoothly is to avoid gaps in your shading. So you want to hold the pencil at the end and just shade like that, and then you can also cover a large area. You also want to make sure that there are no gaps in your pencil strokes. You want them to be as close as possible, so it's very smooth and there are no harsh lines. It's very important to understand light values and dark values. So a good way of doing that is the tonal value scale, where it's from light to dark. So you can just use your pencil and just shade as light as you can, and then as you go along just press harder, and then the harder you press, the darker your strokes are going to be. So you just practice that and make sure that while you're shading from light to dark, just make sure there's like a smooth transition. Another way to get the tonal value scale is you can just draw a rectangle, separate it into boxes, and then just put it from light to dark as you can be and as light as it can be. Because drawings that have a limited value can appear to be like flat, and then drawings that have all ranges of value, light and really dark, can pop more and it looks more realistic and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you use up all the values. So if in your reference picture it's dark, make sure it's really dark when you're shading, and if it's light, make sure it's really light. When it comes to pencils, you don't need to buy expensive pencils. If you're starting out, you can just simply have like a 3B or like a 4B. That's a good pencil. You can still get light values from that and still get dark values. But if you're progressing, you can invest in a few darker pencils. I have 8Bs and 9Bs. And if I want lighter values, you can just use an eraser, and you get your highlighted values. So you don't really need to go and buy a whole pack of pencils. You can just work with a few pencils and they'll give you the whole wide variety of values. So another thing I want to talk about is understanding light and dark values. Because what happens is a lot of people get their sketches looking how they want to, and then as soon as they start shading, it doesn't look as how they want it to. And that's because they're not fully grasping the idea of light and dark values, or they're putting it in the wrong places. So the first thing you need to do is identify the light source. So wherever that light is hitting on that object, that would be the lightest point of the drawing. So you can probably use, but you can just use a eraser and just don't rub it out completely, but just rub it so it can get a little lighter. The bottom now that there's no light at, you would have like a core shadow, and then right above the core shadow, that would be the darkest point of the drawing because there's no light reflecting that. If the light, however, hits the surface that the object is on, you're going to have reflected light. So wherever that reflected light would hit, it wouldn't be the lightest, but it would still be lighter than the rest of the drawing, if you're getting me. And the rest of the drawing now should have mid values and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you identify where the light is coming from. You want to identify reflected light. You want to see the darkest parts of your drawing, and there is also always a core shadow from there being no light touching that part of the object. So when you're looking at the object the first time, you want to just try and identify the lightest part, mid-tones, darkest points, and core shadows. And then once you understand that, you can just, once you start practicing with different objects, you'll get better. So you can start, right now I'm demonstrating a sphere, and like you can see where the light is hitting the top part, that would be the lightest, and at the bottom is the darkest, and then you have that core shadow where there's no light hitting at all because the object is blocking the light, so that would be the core shadow. So you can start off with a sphere. You can go you can probably draw an apple, practice it, put a light source, and then try to identify the light parts and the dark parts. And then after you try, you just do another object. Like I started off with a leaf, and then you just continue, and then you see once you master understanding values and understanding the light, your objects will start to pop, and it will look realistic. You just practice. So the last thing I want to talk about is simplifying objects. A lot of people find it daunting when they see like certain objects or persons and they're like, oh, I can't draw this. You can just break it down in simple objects like circles, squares, triangles. So for example, a nose, you have circles, two little triangles. So really you just need to see an object for what it is, not what you think it is. So as I had said before, if you're going to draw something, always choose a reference picture. You can never go wrong with a reference, guys. Nothing is wrong if you use a reference. I use a reference all the time. If I'm going to draw hands, I'm going to look for a hand, or I'm going to look at my hand and set it how I want it, and then draw it. So all there is to drawing is simplifying objects, understanding how to use your pencil. So just get a piece of paper, play around with how you hold the pencil, the different values, light and dark. If you want it really dark, put a lot of pressure. If you want it really light, don't use a lot of pressure. So you just play around with it, and then after you get that, you start doing simple objects. Start with the sphere, maybe start with an apple, a leaf, and then if you want to challenge yourself, you can draw an eye. But as I said, guys, just practice. You just need to feel comfortable with a pencil and how you use it. Okay, I hope that helped. I really tried to explain it as best as I could. I'm not really my art teacher, but I tried. Hopefully in the future I can do some drawing and painting tutorials. If you guys want to see something specific, just leave a comment below of what you want to see, and I'm trying my best to do that. But basically, guys, art is all about fun, so just have fun, be comfortable with your pencil and paper, and as I said, it's all about pressure control, your pencil strokes, understanding values, understanding light. You see, once you grasp all of that, your drawings, I guarantee your drawings will get better. But you just need to practice, and it's going to take time, but you'll get there. Work your way up. Don't start with something hard, start with something simple. Simple is the way to go. And then after a while, after you feel like you master those things, you can probably take on a portrait and then things there, Like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. So I will see you guys next week.